to shine. Give 'em what you got, baby. Time to show them you are. It's time to shine. Gotta give 'em what you got. Gotta show 'em you are.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Six Chicks podcast, where we bring you curated, authentic, Christ centered realness every single week, baby. Listen, I am so excited that we are having this conversation today. It's going to be another good one. So, today we are talking about, well, actually, we're launching our new series, which is Defining Womanhood. Drum roll, all of that. Clap your hands, do some snaps. I mean, all of the above, y'all. And so we're going to really focus on learning about who we are and really diving into and having a real authentic conversation about the different things, people, experiences that have really shaped us into the women that we are today. And so that's going to really, open up the door to really have some honest inner dialogue within yourself for every single listener, right? And so I was so excited to read about this topic for today's podcast because so many times we don't realize the things that we see, the things that we have heard, and what's been told to us has truly shaped our experiences, right? It's truly shaped how we respond to life and what we receive in this life. And so this is about to be a great conversation. Like I cannot wait for us to really dive in deep to it. And so one thing that I can remember growing up is that as a child, I looked up to different people within my family unit, different people for me within my church unit, and their voices truly impacted my life, right? And so I want to really just start and kick off the conversation by us kind of talking about, you know, what were those experiences like for us growing up? You know, what voices really mattered to us the most, and how did that impact who we are today as a woman and what we have defined womanhood to truly, truly be? So, y'all, let's kick it off.
Okay, I guess I'll go. um, for me, uh, because my mother passed away when I was 3, I think my journey to womanhood wasn't defined. I
Mm,
actually, I don't think that I was. I knew I was a girl, obviously, but um, I didn't. Uh, realized that there was a femininity connected to being a woman and womanhood, right? And so it wasn't until my aunt came along and started assisting my dad with me, that caused me to start to think about myself as a woman and what it means to be a woman. And so she instilled a lot of the very, very traditional things that defines a woman in our
sure.
world. So, you know, you got to be clean, you got to be neat. Certain characteristics of how you should be towards a man, no matter how he acts. We could probably talk about that at another time. Um, just you just have to have it together, and that was how I think that narrative was very big for me, is that you need to have it together. You need to be a lady. Um, and though she wasn't very judgmental. Well, maybe some might thought she was judgmental, but she had a lot to say. I didn't feel like she felt like she was better than people. She just she would sometimes have something to say about people who didn't have it together. I'll just say that. I'm trying not to say she
Sure.
was. It's just weird because I don't feel that she was judgmental. I just think that she just felt people should be living up to a certain standard, specifically women. And so I think a lot of those things um, helped me define myself as a woman. And then as I've grown up, it's evolved a little. But I'll let some of the other ladies, chime in on that.
Yeah, for me, I know the shaping of being a woman. I know just thinking back to when I was little. Definitely my mom and I have a big family on both sides of my family, so it's a ton of cousins and extended family. So a lot of women cousins, ranging from my mom's age to my age. So I feel as though like when I was little, I was more so like just sponging everything up because there was just like this range of like my overall takeaway was just like being like with ladyhood or womanhood being like calm and quiet. But then I
Mm,
would also see, you know, women speaking their mind and like handling business. And so I feel like I got both of those. I mean, there's things in between that too, in between that spectrum. But, going back to my mom and grandmother, I always hear with my grandmothers, they were so like quiet and all of this. And then, my mom, she's quiet at times, but, my mom speaks her mind. So that's kind of what, I didn't really start mirroring that until later as I got older. And so I think it's just like me, like just navigating like all the things that I've been sponging up. Like, I'll run into people later and they would be like, "Oh, Courtney, you're talking so much more now." And I would be like, "Really?" And, part of my pace, I would be like, maybe I just didn't talk to you a lot. I feel as though I always talked, but it just depended on who I was talking to. But that's another story. But yeah, my overall take growing up was just like a lot of diversity as far as what a woman is, but the overarching thing was for a while calm and quiet, and
mm,
then later on as I got older, and just being more like observing of people and in my own circle and my own family. I just got, womanhood is complex. It's just a lot. It can be quiet, it can be loud, it can be speaking up for yourself. It's not just one thing. And so that's kind of what I'm pulling from it, from when I think about womanhood now versus when I was a kid. Yeah.
That's interesting. For me, I was raised by a single mom who took very good care of me. She did a great job. She always handled her business, always made sure I had what I needed. We never went without. It was all good. But um, she came from a place where she grew up in the 50s. She had to go to an all-white high school where she was torn down all the time. Teachers made her feel stupid. She never, answered any questions. She never talked in class. She just always was beat up in class, emotionally, and then went home to a father who did the same thing. So I watched a woman who just she wasn't secure in herself. She isn't secure in herself. Although I see a very strong woman, she doesn't see herself as a strong woman. So I have had to navigate through um, my own insecurities and not understanding where they come from. And looking back, I'm like, oh, it's because I watched a woman be very insecure, because I never had anyone beat up on me, tell me I couldn't do anything, that I wasn't worth anything, that I wasn't beautiful. I never had that. So I'm just like, where did all these insecurities come from? But it just came from modeling someone who was like that. So I have had to work through fighting against those thoughts and fighting against how I felt my entire life for no reason at all. And knowing that I am capable, knowing that I'm enough. Um, and even helping her through that to this day. And it's much harder because she's older, but she never took the time to fight against that. So she still is not secure in who she is. But I, on the other hand, am thankful to have amazing friends who have helped me through that. And of course, the grace of God, who has really shown me how to be a woman, how to be secure, how to be happy within myself and know who I am. So that has been the biggest battle for me as a woman.
With me, just as Angela, my mother had died. Except my mother had died on my birthday when I was 5, and I had siblings, but I had a twin brother. So I pretty much latched onto him, and like I said, I had siblings. I had 2 sisters, and I had a mother, a stepmother. So I was able to learn and grow in my womanhood. But at that time, I just chose to more so be with my brother and just kind of latch onto him and do whatever he was doing and my dad was doing. So I think with me, I started really getting more into womanhood when I really became about like 17, 18, 19 years old, when I started, leaving him and actually having my own girlfriends. And then I started seeing, how they were groomed and what they were doing. And I just started, reaching towards them and learning and growing that way. My mother was always there, like I said, but I just was always wanting to be around my brother. So it's just, it was an interesting time in my life to go through, but again, as I got older, I started to learn more of who I was as a woman and started really like loving it and desiring it. And that just started changing a lot of different areas for me.
Yeah, and for me as well, like my mother died when I was young, when I was 13, but I think about before that, I was an only child in the house, and so I grew up next door with 3 boys next door, and their grandmother was raising them, and I would be over there all the time. So when I think about like growing up and influences, it was a lot of boys and just trying to like run around with them and like play and do what they did and go where they went and stuff. But I never really could because it was always like, you can't go, you can't do that, you're a girl, like you can't do this, you need to sit, you need to sit down, stop being rough with them and X, Y, and Z. But so as I grew up and then I ended up losing my mom, it kind of definitely changed how I approached like just being a woman, a young woman. Um, I would say definitely with the help of my family and friends for sure, just kind of helped me mold like who I am as a woman. And I'm still really growing into that now. But I feel like just from what I learned from my mother, I just modeled, also what she was like, um, taking care of her family, holding herself with, poise and grace. I feel like I've I've grown to do that as I grow older, and the more I look at myself, the more I'm seeing her. But she was mild mannered. I feel like I'm that way as well. Just likes peace and not too much drama or anything like that. She never was that type of woman, and I don't feel like I'm that type of woman either. So I feel like some things I definitely picked up and got from her, but along the journey, it's like I'm still really navigating and figuring out what this womanhood thing really is. So, yeah.
It's like so crazy, like as I'm listening to like all of our answers and responses, because it's like at the end of the day, we're learning womanhood through the lens of somebody else, right? And so as we mature and as we grow, I think we become more indignant about being okay with if our perception of who we were told to be is different. And I think a lot of times, just women in general, I mean, from social media to back in the day when I was growing up to, magazines and the newspaper, like all those different components have the ability to really shape your thoughts and your perceptions about what a woman is, what a woman should do. And for years, I personally thought that your roles, whatever they were, defined you as a woman. And it wasn't until I was older until I realized that it's not the role that defines me. It's the woman, the person, the being on the inside that defines me as a woman. And even though it may look different than what others are trying to shove down my throat, I have to have the courage to be able to stand in my womanhood, whatever it looks like to me. And so that was one of, I think, the greatest, like, it was a harsh reality, but it was a truth that everyone is not going to applaud the woman that you are because you may do it different, you may say it different, you may respond differently than what they expect. But at the end of the day, I had to be okay with people not accepting the woman that I am. And I think now a lot of women struggle with trying to comply, trying to shrink, trying to make others comfortable, even if that means being lesser than, right? And so that is to me one of the harsh realities that we all kind of have to, be able to accept on this journey of becoming and evolving. So let's kind of just dive into that too about what are some realities that you've had to, or hard lessons that you've had to really like accept on your journey to womanhood?
I think for me personally, I've had to accept that sometimes I don't feel like I know how to be a woman. And
Hmm.
that is so weird when you think of that because it's like, well, what do you mean? Because you are one, but I feel like you said we have been forced into a box so that so much and that box is already created for us, right? And when we are so not like that box, like honestly, most people aren't like that box, right?
Right.
So when they're struggling with like, oh, I don't know how to be a woman then, if I can't be in this box, if I can't be married, if I can't have children, if I don't have a Coke bottle figure, if I'm not working out all the time, if I'm not eating right all the time, if I'm not in school, if I'm not, I mean, it's so many things. If you're not a wife, you better be a boss. Like you just, it's all these things. And it's just like, I just have to come to grips with times with like, well, I can't do none of that stuff most of the time. So I guess the thoughts in the past were I'm not a woman, but now it's like, no, I just am who I am. And, you know, it may not look perfect like that mold that's been created for me all the time. So that's been a harsh reality for me. Mhm.
Yeah, that's good. For me, I was thinking about this and I'm like, what is it? But I feel as though I dealt with hiding and self doubt more than thought I did when I
Mm.
was a kid, and still a little bit now, honestly. Um, and I was just thinking about just like this idea of like, or this thing of projection, like how people treat me isn't always connected to who I am,
Right.
but it's more so connected to who they are. And so just thinking about, I had to sit and think about it for a minute, but yeah, I feel as though I dealt more with like that self doubt and like questioning myself and am I wearing this right, or am I like, do I sound right? How's my tone of voice sound? All the girls' voices are deeper. Mine's is still sounding like it is, or whatever, body shapes and things like that. Um, and so those were, I mean, those are, or that's part of the lesson that I'm still learning today. I feel like I have a better grasp on it, or acceptance of like who I am and the moves that I make and the things that I do. But definitely like the lessons centering around like self doubt and doubting myself based on what I'm perceiving other people are projecting onto me, or what they actually are trying to project onto me of what I should be doing or how I should be looking, and things like that. Um, and and with that, also like recognizing those who are also just trying to be big sisters. Like that's something that I've come into as I gotten older as well. Like I still have like my good friends from childhood, and like the sisters that you all hear today. You know, I see them as like my older, more not older as in old, but you know, my big sisters. And so, you know, there's a thing with like caring for, you know, those who are younger than you or like somewhat under you, and versus those that are like just trying to like put their insecurities onto you. And so it's through those different relationships that I've like been able to identify that and still like move forward or grow from that too. That's
Wow.
me.
Yeah. I feel like I finally have gotten over the hump of feeling like what I'm doing is enough, feeling like I'm enough, because I am a wife, I'm a stay-at-home mom, I'm a homeschooler. So you see all these women now who are, you know, entrepreneurs and doing their thing, and that's great. So I struggle with you're not doing enough. And feeling like people were looking at me like, that's how you doing? You're just staying at home with your kids and taking care of your husband and doing this, you know, cooking, cleaning. And I felt like, wow, maybe I'm not doing enough. Like I should be this, I don't know, entrepreneur person doing what I'm doing and doing even more. But I had to realize like, no, I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to do. I'm in the lane that I'm supposed to be in, and it's enough because I have chosen to have a family and to raise my children and to make sure that they are who they were created to be. So that's my ministry. That's my responsibility right now. Not that that will be for the rest of my life, because they will grow up and move out, and there will be other things that I will do. And even with this, being on a podcast now, and there are things, it's just timing more so than anything. So I have just learned to be enough. And people probably aren't even thinking about me and what I'm doing anyway. So who cares? And if they are thinking about me, then they have too much time on their hands, and I don't care. So at the end of the day, just learning how to be happy with myself and getting over everybody else.
That's
Yes.
good, Lisa. That's good.
Definitely.
Yeah. So my
That's
harsh reality, I think definitely has always lied in, as I was growing up, like I said, I was always around my brother, I was around my father. I've always been very comfortable around men. I'm a manager, very organized in that sense. So even being 18 and 19, I have always sat at leadership tables full of men. And in being that way, I have just gained this harsh harshness, like a bit, you can say I'm a bit harsh around the edges. and and in growing up, when as I started to realize that that was just a part of me, it was hard because I felt like there was no self-love within myself when I was realizing that. And I always just thought that that's just how it is, that's just who I am. And it always kind of weighed heavily on me, but I felt like it was just something, and it was just something I had to do. It was just a way I had to be. And it was a harsh reality because I didn't understand how to get through it. I didn't know how to transition. I didn't know how to change. I didn't even know if I should feel like I should change, but part of me wanted to change because I knew that wasn't entirely who I was. You know, I knew I was this loving woman, but how are you a loving woman sitting at these leadership tables with all men? Because they're not loving. So it was hard in those aspects, but as I learned how to love myself, I learned how to just transition and just be who I was and who I was made to be. And that helped ease that harsh reality, because it was okay. And it was okay to be who I was in those situations and not conform to who I thought I needed to be, or who I was, conforming to be. So it's a little interesting. But like you said, self-love, it definitely helps when you start going that way.
Mhm.
Yeah. I agree with that. Like self-love is definitely something that I have struggled with in my journey, and I realize that now. But I think growing up, the relationships that I had with my parents seemed to be like critical. So I've always become like my own worst critic. And I realized that like I'm always trying to people please because I'm thinking in some way that people won't like me or they don't like me. And so some of the times I'm people pleasing to a fault because I'm honoring everyone else's opinion of me over my own opinion of me, and I'm focused on everybody else and how they feel about me and what they think about me instead of really getting down to how I feel about me. And I think that's been one of the realities that I've really come to grips with in more recent years, because I had, began to be, I like began to like lost myself. Like I lost myself, just not really knowing or really thinking about who I was, and who I am, because I'm trying to please someone else and be who somebody else needs me to be. And I had been getting through life like that for the majority of my life. So, it's like it really woke me up one day like, wait a minute. You don't even like this. You don't even want to do this. You don't like, you don't even like just all of these things I had built this whole life that I didn't like to please people who were not me,
Wow.
and so I think just really even coming to grips with that is really, that was the first step to really defining, wait a minute, who is Ife? First of all, who is she? Okay, let's get back to her for a second so you can figure out the rest of whatever you need to figure out. Because if you don't know who she is, you're not going to be able to figure out anything else. You're not going to be able to move forward being greater or doing better than you already are right now. And so I think that's one of like the biggest things I had to sit back and really smack myself about.
That's so good. It's like, the evolution that and the process, the journey of becoming and being a woman can feel harsh, right? It can feel extremely uncomfortable. It can feel like, like you're losing yourself or you're trying to redefine yourself. But I really believe that that's all a part of the journey and nobody never really told us, right? Nobody told us that this is what the process looked like for me. And even though yours may be different, you may feel like this. I wish somebody in my 20s would have told me, girl, you're not going to know. You're going to go through 3 and 5 and 4 different things that you want to do with your life. You're going to, process through this way, and this is going to happen in this fashion. Man, that would have been great. So I could have took some of the pressure off of myself to perform, to respond, to think that I had to have everything all together. You know what I mean? And even like now, like in my 40s, it's the same thing. I'm like, hey girl, like give yourself grace. And as we're talking about defining womanhood, that would be the one thing that I would say to the ladies that are listening, that give yourself grace through the process of being who God created you to be. Like the highs and the lows make you into the woman that you are. If you had one word, one motivational word to give to a woman that's listening, what would that one word be, ladies? My word for sure would be grace. Just have the grace to just go through the journey with no apology.
My one word would be patience.
I don't like one words, but listen.
Angela took my word, so I have to say 2 words: be open.
Mine is definitely love. Love yourself, but love.
I think I would say be present. I feel like I overthink. So I'm just like, be in the moment, but be present. Like
One word.
one word, present.
That's so good. That's so good. Listen, this is only part 1 of our Defining Womanhood series. So definitely want you all to stay connected. Ife, let them know how they can do that.
Okay. We love you guys so much, and thank you guys so much for tuning in to the podcast tonight. So if you want to stay connected with us, make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, IG at the Six Chicks, and then you follow us on YouTube. Go like and subscribe all of our all of our videos and everything. Go subscribe right now on the Six Chicks podcast on YouTube. Okay. And we love you guys again. We want you to join us next time as we continue this journey on defining womanhood, and we discuss loving on ourselves. Okay. All right. So remember, guys,
It's time to shine.